5, 4, 3. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. We are on X. That's right, at Santita Jackson Show. And we're on Blue Sky at santitajackson.bsky.social. Thank you, Ariel Gold, for giving me a shout out. I got many more followers after that. Thank you. And then, of course, we're on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please meet us there. Santita Jackson and Friends on Facebook. Boy, we got a lot going on as we talk about Kids for Cash, as we talk about really the Biden pardons as his presidency winds down. Things are not winding down. They're amping up. We're praying for the people of Madison, Wisconsin. At least 2 people have been killed, and the shooter is dead at a Wisconsin K-12 school. Sending so much love. We're getting a lot of details as we speak, everybody. But, Dr. King talked about, the bombs that we drop overseas exploding at home. And here we are, Ariel Gold, Fellowship of Reconciliation. Indeed, that was an organization that was near and dear to Dr. King's heart. Mm-hmm. You are the executive director, the first Jewish American executive director. And of course, but I call you pan-religious. It's kind of what we do. Well, you embrace people. You come up with things. What can I tell you? Attorney Mark Fancher, brilliant attorney, and always bringing us right back to front, putting morality and God at the center of everything. Attorney Linda Bernard, brilliant lawyer. Indeed, she has won several cases before the Michigan State Supreme Court, and she is the police, everybody. She is a commissioner in the Big D, Detroit. And so let's talk about this. Kids for Cash, victim reacts after President Biden commutes the sentence for the Pennsylvania judge. Does anyone remember this story? This is from thehill.com, and I've read so many of these stories. As President Biden is pardoning and commuting sentences, one popped up on our radar, Ariel Gold, Attorney Fancher, and Attorney Linda Bernard, that made us go, whoa, really? Yeah, and we're still trying to figure out just what happened here. Let me just read to you from this article because I don't want to misstate anything. President Joe Biden commuted the sentence of disgraced Kids for Cash, Judge Michael Conahan, and one victim is expressing anger over it. This is what happened. He and another judge, Mark Chiavarella, both of Luzerne County, Pennsylvania, were convicted in connection with a scheme, everybody. Remember this? That sent thousands of juveniles, children, to 2 private detention centers. It sent thousands of children to jail. Let's not candy coat this. In exchange for millions of dollars in kickback. They sent thousands of kids to jail in exchange for millions of dollars in kickbacks. They sent thousands of kids to jail in exchange for millions of dollars for themselves, for their personal enrichment in kickbacks. I keep repeating this because it is as horrible as it sounds. Amanda Laura, who is a victim of this scheme, said, quote, "It's a big slap in the face for us once again. We had no time to get any time away from us. We had no one to talk to, but now we're talking about the President of the United States who's doing this to us. What about all of us?" Last week, as we talked about Hunter Biden's pardon, we said, what about the 94 crime bill that put thousands in prison? He took a little pill like my little supplement here, my zinc pill, and he was on the floor of the U.S. Senate saying, look, if you have crack, this much crack, you go to jail forever. You remember that, Mark Fancher? You remember that? Remember that, Attorney Linda Bernard?
Your father called it a sweet and low packet of crack cocaine gets you more time than having a pound of real cocaine or 10 pounds of real cocaine.
Well,
Your
I mean,
father said sweet and low packet.
but that's what it was at the time. Splenda, stevia, whatever it is, not even sugar.
Right.
And so, as we are I just wanted to look at this. That's why I had to continue. Let me start with you, Attorney Fancher. Thousands of kids. You know, I'm not going to candy coat this, Ariel. Thousands of juveniles to detention centers, no private detention centers. They sent thousands of children to private jails. What is the Kids for Cash scheme, and what is going on here, Attorney Fancher?
Well, these judges were properly convicted. Obviously, we expect that judges are not going to be sitting on the bench with conflicts of interest or vested interests in the outcome of the cases that come before them, that they're not going to impose sentences um, that result in them making a profit, that's not going to motivate them and affect their judgment. And so they were properly convicted, as I understand. But I think the issue is why President Biden was moved to commute their sentences or to otherwise allow them to get relief. And from what I understand, it was a matter of either he or his staff not reviewing carefully the particulars of these judges' cases and their circumstances, and that because their cases fit certain broad criteria that they had established for large numbers of pardons and commutations, that they were lumped in with a lot of other people. Um, I would like to preface my additional comments by saying that I like the idea of letting people out of prison. I'm not down with the idea of mass incarceration generally, and so his inclination to look at and release large numbers of people is something that I applaud. But I do think that this particular incident highlights the need for some discretion, and more particularly for progressive discretion to be used, because there are so many people who really do deserve to be out. Foremost among them, in my opinion, are Leonard Peltier of the American Indian Movement and Mumia Abu-Jamal, who have been in prison forever. And even if one wants to accept that they are guilty of the crimes that they were convicted of, if you look generally at the period of time that's served by people for comparable crimes, then it's really, relatively speaking, at least equal to or exceeds what should be expected for what they're accused of having done. And that's not to mention the many other people whose names the general public does not know, who were caught up in as victims of the FBI's counterintelligence program, or COINTELPRO, who were very active during the 1960s and the 1970s with the Black Panther Party, the American Indian Movement, Students for a Democratic Society, and a number of other organizations that were targeted by the FBI, and they were framed. Many of them were sent away, and they were not at all guilty, but they were the victims of trumped up charges, and they were railroaded, and they ended up spending decades and decades in prison. And unfortunately, a number of those people have passed away. I think most recently, Mutulu Shakur. And these are people who never should have been in prison in the first place, but certainly should not be allowed to rot and die in prison cells. And those are the kinds of people that I think should be allowed out of prison, as opposed to really sleazy judges that are making profits from the privilege that they have of wearing black robes.
I find it hard to believe, Mark, that his staff just decided to pardon these guys without looking at their records. I just, I don't believe that. I don't even find it hard to believe. It doesn't even beggar belief for me. I don't believe any of that. They knew what they were doing. A pardon is a very serious matter. It is. I mean, and this was a huge case, and it is a huge deal today. You imprison children by the thousands, and then you let these judges off. Mark, this is patently this is an injustice.
Oh, it definitely is, and your skepticism is well grounded. I can't.
Oh no, I'm not a skeptic. I don't believe it.
Okay, well.
Yeah, I'm saying I don't believe it. I feel like we're being lied to. I don't believe it. I don't believe any of it. I don't. I know how hard it is to get a pardon. People go and beg on your behalf to get you a pardon. And no, I don't believe any of it. I don't believe them. I don't believe them at all. I don't. This is just as political, and it's all political. But it is, you're freeing people who did what they did to these young people is so egregious. I think if you let them out, they ought to be on community service forever. You put children in jail for money, for yourself. Oh my gosh. No, I don't believe it. I don't believe any of it.
Well, there's certainly good grounds for it. And I think, and it's not unprecedented. And I know nothing about what is going on behind the White House closed doors, but I do know that in the 1970s in my home state of Tennessee, there was a governor named Ray Blanton who was driven from office and convicted for what was called clemency for cash. He had set up an operation where he was selling pardons to prisoners quite openly, and was brought down by a whistleblower. And there was a major Hollywood film that was made about him. And I have the proud honor of having been part of a student group that confronted him when he was governor about the University of Tennessee's investments in apartheid South Africa. So so it's not like this is something that's unheard of, that there is crime associated with granting pardons to people who have committed crimes.
Attorney Linda Bernard, well, what do you say? What do you see, and what do you have to say?
First of all, I agree wholeheartedly with Mark in the sense that America has more than 3 million people in jail, more than any country in the world, more than China even. Unbelievable. They got billions and billions of people over there. The prison industrial complex is a business in and of itself, and we all know that. But I personally don't believe, and I don't know what Mark and Ariel believe, and you, but I don't believe any sentence should be more than 20 years. I think that is a life sentence, and that's what it's considered all over Europe. Can't go to jail more than 20 years. And the whole time you're in there, you're learning stuff and, getting ready to be released. Now, in terms of this case that you're talking about, in Sunday's Free Press, there was everybody knows Mitch Albom. He writes prolifically, and he's a guy, he has an orphanage in Haiti and brings all these kids from Haiti and so forth to Detroit and throughout the country. But he wrote about the case that you're talking about the judge. This is just one sentence, really. The mother of one son who was sent to that detention center and later committed suicide, issued a statement saying she was, quote, shocked and hurt, end quote, and that the pardon for the judge after what happened to her son felt like an injustice. In her situation, I understand it. But in general, as a lawyer, pardons happen for your governor, happens all the time for people. based on money, power, prestige. And that's the unfairness that I think Mark was relating to. It should also be a matter of justice. Unfortunately, that's generally not the case. So apparently, these judges had some serious Democratic political connections, and it worked for them. Nothing can bring back this woman's son. No, nothing can, correct all of the other than the lawsuit against the state, which hopefully gave them at least some recompense for what happened to the kids that were put there. But in the Mitch Albom article, Santita ends with and talks about the importance of forgiveness. That that it's important to forgive, not just religiously, but in your heart and in your mind. All of your enemies, all of the people that come against you. It's an amazing article. I liked it so much. Before you even called me today, I had cut it out because I wanted to remember about forgiveness and about the importance of it as a concept, and it's the right thing to do. So everybody has some redeeming characteristics. Your father says it best, as you know. So, I mean, apparently, maybe this man has turned his life around. When Mark, you remember when they killed that white girl down there in Texas, and all those people were outside by execution. How much she'd become like a law professor and everything, and they killed her anyway because she was part of a murder of a husband and wife when she was with two guys that were probably her boyfriends, that she was high on drugs and stuff. She didn't even remember even being in the house. But apparently two people were killed, and so they executed her. So I am with you, Mark, on this. I do believe in redemption, and this article, you guys all can pull it up. Mitch Albom's easy to find. It was a Sunday paper. Once you read the article, I think that you will be more, if you will, sympathetic to this issue. I assume that this mother got money from the state. Hopefully she did. Millions she deserves, since her son committed suicide as a result of being there. And that's all we can do at that point. But this guy, these judges have families, people that love them too. And just like the Menendez brothers, who actually I'm in favor of being released. But
so much information has come out in the 30 plus years since then. I mean, because anyone who began to hear about Menudo, the group that one of the groups that their father oversaw, there's been a lot of sexual abuse there. And when that murder first happened, I said, they're angry with their parents. Something horrific happened in that house. Because for them to jump across the Rubicon that way, I'm clear on that. When people say things don't make sense, I'm clear that they do. We just don't have all the pieces, or we don't want to put them in there. I would never if someone gave my brother Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. a pardon today, I'd be thrilled.
Which he deserved.
No. But wait. I can't stop there. In fact, I'm not starting there. Before he went to prison, a lot of people were sent to prison starting in 1994. Let's just start there with the crime bill that this president crafted that removed Pell Grants from the prison, so these folks could not get degrees because they didn't have monies that their parents couldn't pay. Many of them didn't have family or friends who could pay for them to get degrees. I'm looking at folks. I'm looking at white young kids who are cannabis entrepreneurs and drug dealers who are in prison because of Joe Biden's policies. He's not I hope he surprises me and commutes their sentences and gives them pardons. I'm not seeing it. And these are laws. This is a law that he crafted that would have put his son in prison under the jail. I think Hunter should have been pardoned. His father
Me too.
Had the space to, just because his father had the power to do it. But you don't do it in a vacuum. It's not just about you. These are thousands of kids. Where are these men's hearts? Some people like, no. You don't just, forgiveness is one thing. Excusing is another. This is not a pardon as much as this is they have been excused. You used to get an excuse in school. This is not a pardon. Pardon is, I'm sorry. I won't do this again. No, an excuse is, no, we're going to let you pass. Well, you know what spiritual law says: you will get by, but you won't get away. This is wrong. I'm with compassion, but everybody doesn't deserve this. This is horrible. In just in my thoughts, But Ariel, and let's continue to have this conversation around. But I want to hear what you have to say, Ariel.
Yeah. Well, first of all, leaning in on that Menendez story, right? Just from the get-go, nobody does that without a reason. Young children do not, and greed is not the reason in that context, in that way. That's not how it happens. And so that court and that jury at that time, like, that's an obvious, but that wasn't the time and place. In that time and place, sexual abuse and assault, really severe in this case, it's the fault of the victim. And so that needs to be rectified. And kids who did that, sure, like, they have troubles, absolutely. And prison is not rehabilitative. And we know this. And I just want to say, there are some folks that belong in prison and for a good long time. And they are the manufacturers of those guns that just took down children.
That's
today.
Right.
They are the healthcare executive who did not deserve to be shot dead. But those healthcare executives, they do deserve accountability and responsibility, whether that's prison or other forms, and redistribution. Mm-hmm. So if we're going to talk about justice, let's be justice centered. And I have mixed feelings on Hunter Biden being pardoned.
Okay,
how so? And I agree. I think Biden lied to us, and I think that's not okay.
I do too. I mean, the thing is, you were going to pardon your son. Don't look me in my eye. And stop it. I know you're going to pardon him. We know that.
Just tell us he's your son. And you know what? That's understandable, right? That you want to pardon your son.
Just I understand it. But you know what? Then if you're going to do that for your child, you need to be prepared to do that for a lot of other people's children. Because a lot of other people have children too. A lot of other people have lost a spouse. A lot of other people have lost children and a spouse at the same time. I hear you, but that does not absolve you from doing the right thing. Ariel, I'm tired of this.
But Santita, if I just may, and Mark wants to say something.
Help me.
Just real, very, very quickly. No, I think he should have pardoned him at the indictment stage. Why does he have to incur $7 million in legal fees and so forth? It would have been done 2 years ago. I would have pardoned my son, my sister, my mom, my dad, somebody I really super love and that I believe in. And I know that it's not going to happen again. I mean, that's the point.
Or whatever it is that they were doing. Because right. A lot of these, because I think there was a lot up underneath that. But,
the whole family's guilty. Got that part. But But I'm just saying, I never understood it in the first place because I'm sure Ariel may feel the same way. But I know families move, Black families in particular, move to protect their children. And I never understood the discussion. The answer would be, but he wouldn't have gone to trial. We wouldn't have spent on. Now he has all that debt, everything else they got to pay off, and not to mention the cost of the system.
Oh, you talking about Biden?
Yeah, I'm talking about Biden.
Oh, look, they're fine. They have made so much money.
Oh, I know.
No. They have done quite well. They have abused the system.
Oh, there's no question.
He took his son with him on these official trips, and they benefited from that. That's just, I don't care, Democrat or Republican. If Trump did that with his own children, we would be raising all kinds of Cain, and we would be investigating them too. So just stop. Either you want the system to be respected and not abused, or you don't. But what I'm talking, Hunter, I'm past that. He's been pardoned and scholars on the right and the left said, we never seen anything like this. He's been pardoned for a decade's worth of stuff.
Right.
Now, wait a minute. You in prison. I don't know where you gather up the nerve to imprison thousands of children and put them into 2 private prisons, and you make millions of dollars. You get pardoned for what? If you want to commute their sentences, okay, that's your job. But what?
But Santita, you know, if we really want to be real about this, these two judges were being good Americans. I mean, because that's what America is all about.
Oh
I
God.
mean, from the very outset, prisons have been used for purposes of personal gain, for purposes of controlling unwanted populations. And this was certainly consistent with the American tradition. During the period of slavery, you know, prisons were not as dominant a feature of American life. But after slavery was ended, then they became very important because of the convict lease system. When Southern planters no longer had the opportunity to enslave people, then what they would do is that they would rent prisoners from jails and from prisons to work the fields. So the more prisoners that you had, the more labor that you had access to. And so it was important to go out and to arrest lots of Black people so that planters would have people to go and work the fields after they rented them. In northern cities, prisons were important because free Blacks during that period, during slavery, were competing for economic opportunities and for jobs with white workers. And so the American Colonization Society had as its
Yes.
agenda the shipment of free Black people to Africa to colonize them there. And as part of the case they made for doing this was the idea that Black people were inherently criminal. And in order to prove their point, through the cooperation of friendly law enforcement and journalists, they packed the jails and the prisons with free Black people and made much of it in the public media, the mass media, so that people would come around to the idea that that's where they belong, is not either in jail or out of this country. And you know, you fast forward to later periods in history when prison jails were the place where you sent people who were resisting the status quo, whether it was civil rights workers, whether it was Black Power advocates, whether it was anti-war activists, whether it was anybody. These people who were making trouble and destabilizing things, they were the ones who were sent to prisons and to jails, and they were convenient for that use. You know, when you got into the 60s and the 70s, when people in the cities were burning them down to protest racial injustice and and police and violence and that type of thing, they found that the so-called ghettos, as they used to call them, were no longer sufficient for maintaining control of these populations that were rebellious and dissatisfied. And so they began to pack the prisons with them where they could be kept under greater control. And then politicians began to see the value of prisons because it made for good political headlines to say that they were tough on crime.
Right.
And so they began to enact legislation that would give them authority to put even more people in prison so that they could brag about it and say that this is something that was to their credit as politicians. And then you have the private prison industry where large corporations were able to make lots of money off of prisons. And so, in fact, one of the major prison corporations would come into a state, Michigan was one of them, where
That's
they
right.
said, you have, we've looked at the line item for corrections in your budget. We can take care of that by taking over that responsibility for you. You just have to guarantee us that you're going to provide us with X number of prisoners per year so that our operation will be profitable. So this kind of thing goes on and on. So when you got two judges who decide that they're going to make a few bucks, a few million bucks off of sending kids to jail, then it should come as no surprise. They're fitting right in with the American tradition because that's what America is all about. One big prison, one big jail for all of the people who really are considered as undesirables.
Well, now forgive me for getting off point. What did you say? Stop saying that this is not who we are, because this is who we are. I am just, you know what my father said? The worst thing about slavery is not being a slave, it's adjusting to it. And I just don't want to adjust to this madness. Because when I think of all of these children, and we're going to be talking about this later on today, I see them going to jail and the impact that that had on their lives. You do know some of these kids were destroyed by this.
But most of the juvenile justice system is a system of enslavement. Mark knows here in Detroit, there's been all kinds of litigation. Where if you put them in the private jail or the municipal jail or the state jail for
But
kids, Hawthorne is called in Michigan, same thing. I have a lawsuit right now against them where a worker there beat the heck out of a little kid like 4 feet tall, and she got caught on video doing it. So jails are inhumane for children and adults, unless I guess you go to Cape Cupcake, which I've never been there. But I mean, from what I understand, they are inhumane places.
yeah, but they ought not be. And I hear you, Arlene. You said Trump has done worse. Really? Please stop. Just stop. Stop. They stopped all the investigations about Biden. Just stop it. Just stop. I don't know how you can be a public official and live in $1 million house on the beach. I mean, okay, I'm not mad at you. You do what you do, but just stop it. Stop. He did what he did, and these folks do what they do. I get that. What I'm talking about is I don't see you outraged, Arlene, about imprisoning all these children. You're still trying to cover for Democrats. Democrats and Republicans are the same. It's a uni party. They just have two different cultural arguments. That's the tragedy here, and nothing changes because we want to have party arguments instead of dealing in principle.
That's true.
This system is abused. There are a lot of political prisoners who need a pardon, but we're not touching them. You've got some men who, with their eyes wide open, abused the public trust. They violated it. And they openly profited from the system. You're not upset about that? Why don't you give me a comment about that? Well, give me a comment about that. Please talk to me.
You want to talk about the abuse of the system? It's based on race, gender, and economic ability. That's the abuse, and it starts way before they get to jail. It starts with in the court with the representation that they get, and the rich get
that, really.
What were you saying?
Before
Ariel?
that, even it starts right with the whole pipeline from the beginning. And we want to talk law and order. There's lots the U.S. could do for some law and order that we could use. It does not involve those children.
I just, for somehow or another, and when I see the outrage of the people to whom this happened and hearing their families, something about this pardon is a little different from others. Ariel, why did you nod your head in assent? Why did you do that? Just something just doesn't seem right.
About this pardon? I don't know. Actually, I walked back. All the pardons at the end of the presidencies are, most of the time, are garbage, right?
Yeah, because they let poor people.
Let's talk law and order. There are international arrest warrants, and some of those belong to U.S. leaders. So we want to talk law and order. Let's start there. Let's start with the real crooks in America, the corporations, the prison industrial complex, the private prison systems. There's so much. If we want to embrace law and order, there's so much we could do to really embrace law and order.
Well, I hear you. I mean, because that's part of the outrage that's been directed at Brian Thompson. No one is celebrating. Some people, very few, are celebrating his death. Quite frankly, those are not the comments that I've read. people are outraged about the healthcare system, the health insurance industry, the private health insurance industry in America, and they're now being heard. And now these people who are cowards are running for cover. And they're trying to figure out what happened. No, the thing is, you can't get over on people anymore. Brian Thompson's base salary was $1 million a year. How did he end up at $10 million? That extra $9 million came from denying you coverage. Look at Michael Moore's film Sicko. It will sicken you. Arlene, I'm simply making, and don't jump back and say America was built on violence and injustice. That's right. I'm trying to point that out. But you want to make it for me about Democrats and Republicans. You can keep that, because I don't play politics that way. I'm on principle. Principle. It was a Democrat who signed off on the killing of Fred Hampton in Chicago. It was a Democratic Party machine that ran Dr. King out of Chicago. Dr. King was killed under a Democratic president. Don't you tell me about what all these people will do. This is about power. Stop playing. I want some tears for these children and for their parents. They're as much parent to their children as Biden has been to his. Cry for them. Your default position can't be, well, America was built on violence and injustice. No, you came at me on Trump. You're not taking a principle-based position, and I think you're too principled for that. Something about this pardon doesn't feel right to me. But Mark, you corrected me. You said, wait. This is the American way. This is how we do what we do.
Trump released 14,000 people that were in jail just for the crack cocaine and all that kind of stuff.
He did?
Yes, he did while he was president.
I'm saying he did. I'm agreeing with
you. He did.
Right. I mean, everybody sees it, but no one wants to really usually sweep it clean. You, as Mark said, you could release all of these political prisoners, and everyone else has just been charged based on some sort of fallacy, including the new prosecuting attorney in California, who now has put the whole Menendez brothers thing on hold, which is ridiculous. But I'm just saying, everybody's playing politics to their audience. And in the end, poor people and others, freedom fighters, they just get caught in the middle. They get caught in the vice. Your brother included. Your brother, Jesse Jr., had mental issues documented by Mayo Clinic and every place else, and then they're going to hold him responsible.
Look, there was another congressman who had pulled more than $3 million. They covered him. Okay, my brother didn't sign a paycheck.
That's correct.
Because he doesn't handle his money. The men in my family don't handle their money. My father will tell you today he doesn't know how much money he's got, because my mother handles the money. You ain't getting a dime out of the Jackson family unless you must go through Mrs. Jackson. That's just how that goes. If she wants the house, she gets some, anything. So, I mean, enough. Yo, I mean, but I'm not even making a play. I'm not even making a case for my brother. Well, I mean, because they certainly could do that for him. But I'm upset about these people from 1994, Mark. I mean, this was like a bomb dropped in the Black community in particular. It was a bomb. Families were obliterated. Lives were destroyed. And folks are rotting in jail now. And then they couldn't go to school. Ariel and Linda and Mark, I mean, you take their opportunity to develop their minds. I mean, you won't let them get a degree in prison. I mean, what?
Yeah, and we really have to consider it in the broader social context and understand that none of this stuff just sort of unfolded as a matter of course or by accident. That it was the result of some very calculating decisions that were made about how to control populations. Because you can see the drift of communities that had been marginalized and oppressed historically. In the 1960s, certainly the civil rights movement, approached it from a nonviolent, you know, perspective. And you move into the 1970s, things become more militant. But not only are they becoming more militant, but the level of consciousness is continuing to rise. And you begin to see, not just in the Black community, but in Latino communities, in Native communities, in Asian communities, other organizations that are developing, which are considered as allied organizations of the Black Panther Party. And it's necessary when something like that begins to happen to destabilize that movement. And there are documents that have been disclosed about experiments that were carried out by the CIA and research that was done by their researchers, one of which uh, came back with an idea about how to blunt the impact of this rising militancy among black communities. And they said that it could be done through the distribution and the regulation and the criminalization of narcotics. And not long after that, you began to see a growth in the use of heroin in Black communities. And that was followed later by this huge infusion of crack cocaine that they later came to document as being not only something that the CIA was responsible for introducing into Black communities, but the proceeds of those sales were also being used to pursue an agenda in Central America that was also to the advantage of those in power in the U.S. And so, we've made reference earlier to the 100 to 1 sentencing guidelines that related to crack versus powder cocaine and how that was racialized. And so you have communities that are targeted for arrest and mass incarceration based on the need to control them and to prevent a resistance to the continuing exploitation and the amassing of great wealth because of the greed of people who do hold the levers of power in their hands. And so the system has been weaponized against these communities, and they've done everything they can to destabilize these communities. And so, the crime bill and the criminalization of many of the increased sentences for drugs and things, and the so-called war on drugs, really became a scorched earth campaign through communities of color that depopulated many of these communities, primarily of their male populations. And a lot of the average person doesn't have a chance to spend any time in prisons just talking to people who are there. But if you go and you spend any time at all just talking to the people there, if you're not careful, you can begin to think that you're not in a prison, but that you're in a college fraternity house. I mean, these young men in particular are very, very intelligent, very talented and capable people whose lives are being, squandered. Their creativity and their energy and their intellect is being squandered behind these walls. And it's usually because they're there for something that's just dumb. There's no reason for them to be in prison, but they're there because they got caught up in a social scene which limits their opportunities, which causes them to believe that, number one, that their lives are worthless. They have internalized in a big way the messages that have been sent to this entire society about the worthlessness of Black life. And the fact that they have no reason, there's nothing that they can contribute to this country other than to kill people who are just like them.
That's right.
And so then as soon as they do that, then in their minds, they believe that they've committed a great public service by eliminating this great threat to the society. And then the powers that be turn around and point a finger at them and say that they have no business complaining about police violence and police crimes because of black on black crime. I mean, it's a tragic irony. I mean, the source of police violence, the source of so-called black on black crime is the same. It's hatred of black life. Some people who are white just hate black people, and police who are white hate black people, not all, but many of them who commit these crimes. And there are many black people who have learned to hate themselves because of what they've been told by the broader society, the media, the popular culture, and everything that tells them from the time that they're born that their lives are worthless and that they can do nothing but aspire at best, to be hip hop artists, at best. But otherwise, they might have to settle for being drug dealers and gangsters.
I mean, a genre that's been polluted, because when it was black owned, you didn't have, women were not the B word. Black men were not the N word. They did not glorify irresponsible, intimate relations. They glorified having a good time, family, eating chicken with your family, and on and on and on. That's what that was. Now, and it was taken over, or should I say, overtaken by people who polluted our community and stunted our growth and sent us back. And you need to recognize that for what it is. Arlene, let me say this to you. I do not mean to render offense to anyone who has listened to my show and who knows me personally and publicly. I do not seek to offend. I don't come for people and try to be unkind. And I think I'm a little too big to get personal. But this is a personal and an interpersonal medium, and it's an interactive medium. And you cannot throw things out there and not expect me to respond. Otherwise, say nothing. You should have your picture up there so I can see who you are. You know who I am. Now, if we're going to be grown people and engage with one another, let's do it. But if you come at me, I'm coming for you. And I'm not coming for you. I'm coming at your position. This is not personal. I don't know you. I love you. But I don't have conflagrations with my close friends. I don't do that. And Linda has been a close friend for a long time. She knows I do not go on the attack. I don't do that. Ariel and I have become dear sister friends. I don't do that. I don't have time for that. Mark and I have known each other more than 20 years. I don't do that. I don't have time for that. I don't. So there is that. Just refine your argument and then come from me. I know the mess that's out here in the public discourse. If I don't put on a cheerleader's uniform and do the rah-rah for the Democrats, you always get upset, Arlene. I'm not with that. I don't do my party politics like that. I grew up in a Chicago where a Democratic state's attorney followed the directive of J. Edgar Hoover and killed Fred Hampton. Do you know how traumatizing that was for me as a child? I knew Fred Hampton. I grew up under a Chicago Democratic machine that ran Dr. King out of town. And my father was left here. Well, Dr. King didn't bring in the town. He came here to the University of Chicago. I grew up with so much hostility. My brother had to be sent away to school at 10 under Democrats. We didn't run with the Democratic Party in 83 and 84. They did everything they could to throw Reverend out. He had to run against the party, to make the party and to make democracy work and to make the republic much stronger. This was never about the Democratic Party. This was always about increasing and enhancing democracy and strengthening the republic. I know because I was there. And you made a comment, and I made a comment to you, and that's it. Of course, you didn't come. This is not personal. None of this is personal. I don't even know your face. And I don't care. I'm not very sensitive about party politics. You are. I don't care about party politics, and I don't do them. I'm a Democrat, a registered Democrat, so I can vote for my brother. That's it. Because I'm an independent, straight down the line. Period. I want fairness, period. And if someone on any side, Ariel and Mark and Linda, does something right, I will applaud it. If you do something wrong, I'm going to come after it. These people, when my parents were young and almost penniless, because my father worked for Dr. King for the princely sum of $75 a week that he had to raise. And there's a furniture store here in Chicago. I won't call their name. I don't think they're in business. They knew my parents were struggling with 3 kids, 3, 2, and 1. And when my father went to work for Dr. King, we had to move out of the dorm and get an apartment. So the A.R. Leak family, one of those prominent families in the country, they not only provided an apartment for my parents, they had to pay rent. It was in their building where they lived. They put carpeting in it, and they helped my parents to establish a line of credit at this little store. And they said, you know what, Reverend? We want to give you a bedroom set. My father said, thank you very much. He said, but don't think I won't get up out of that same bed and pick at you in the morning. Next, you don't have Black people in your store selling, and yet we are buying your products. No, it wasn't Nelson Brothers, but it was someone else. So, and I respect your opinion. Now, either we're going to be able to rock and roll or not. But see, you know, the Jacksons, we argue for fun for the holidays. That's what we do. That's what we do. So either you're going to rock and roll with me or look, honey, you're in the wrong bit. You're in the wrong space. Because we fight for a living. I'm accustomed to taking shots. Boom. How about that part? So I'm going to get closing thoughts from everybody here. I love you, Harleen. Put your picture up there. Come on, put it up. So we can know, so we can engage each other in truth. Ariel, would you like to, my dear Ariel, would you like to say something about this dreadful excuse? It's not even a pardon. It insults the concept.
Mm-hmm. You know, we are just such a long ways from sanity right now here in the US, and it's just going to get worse. As we see right now, just in time for Christmas, another school shooting. And what we don't see is real accountability, and whether that is related to the manufacturers of our gun violence epidemic or the war criminals in the Middle East that we are supplying with weapons of mass destruction, or it is the executives who prevent us from receiving adequate health care, and on and on and on. And we need to get on it, right? We need to get on it, and we need to know that these are the issues that we need to be working on, and that our enemies are not the migrants and the refugees coming into our country, but the military industrial complex and big pharma and corporate America across the world. So let's speak truth to power and pace ourselves for this long road and fight ahead.
Well, you know, maybe we're going to get well, because the quiet part's being said out loud now. All the stuff that we used to whisper about, ooh, ooh, ooh. Well, now everybody knows it. Attorney Linda Bernard, about a minute for you.
I just think that, and I'm sure that everyone may agree with me, we're going to see more pardons that we may or may not agree with. I understand that Anthony Fauci, who is now damn near a billionaire, and all the rest of the guys and ladies who
we
made
don't
lots
know
of money.
if he's a billionaire. We don't know that.
I say he's on his way. Because of the pharmaceutical industry, what Ariel was just speaking about. I mean, we're going to see more preemptive, which is what we've been talking about in large part, preemptive pardons. So if they catch you later on, if somebody indicts you in the next 2 years, you've already been pardoned for all the dirt that you did in the previous 4 or 8 or 10 or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's what we really should brace for. I agree with the topic of your show today. It's really sad about these kids. I've represented them. Mark has too. We are very familiar with the problem, but as I've said in written articles, we always say save the children. On the other hand, we say hang them high, because they get tried as adults when they're still peeing in the bed. So I don't understand it, but it's a real problem, and it's something that we're going to have to address.
Attorney Mark Fancher.
Then hang them high.
Hang them high. Attorney Mark Fancher, you leave it to Attorney Linda Bernard to kind of break it down.
Yeah, when Jesus was walking across the water, Peter said, let me come out and walk to you. And Jesus said, yeah, get out and walk on the water. And he did. He was fine as long as he was watching Jesus. But then he started looking at the wind and the waves and the storms, and he started to sink. And I think that the lesson for us is that we got a lot of storms that are hitting us in a big way right now, but we got to ignore them. Once you start to pay attention to the storms too much, then you cease to do what you really need to do as an individual. And once you cease to use your talents in the best way that you can use them, once you lose faith in the capacity that you have to make a contribution, you get distracted by all of the storms and you start to sink. And so I think that each of us as an individual, we all need to just remain focused on doing what we know is right, continue moving forward. And as long as we do that, we're going to survive the storms because they're going to continue to rage. We can't get distracted by them.
Amen to that. Amen to that, everybody.
Amen.
And let's continue to talk about it because, this is part of the school to prison pipeline. Like, that's what is so upsetting. And we got to talk about that. Arlene, I hear you. Your picture, your choice. I hear you. But one of the interesting things about functioning in cyberspace is that it gives people space to say things that they would not say to your face. And I have an issue with that because I'm accustomed to being out there. So that's right. Focus on the important stuff. So focus on the important stuff. You know that I'm not sensitive about parties. I cannot care anything about them because I already know the joke. You don't know how close we got to the presidency. I learned a whole lot and I try to share it with you. It's not about parties. It's about power. All these people, as my grandmother would put it, are, let's say, sleeping under the same quilt. You ought to know that. I try to share that with you. I'm not telling you what's something I guess. I'm telling you what I learned, what I know. These folks hug it out. They sleep up under the same quilt, honey, and do everything else. And you just need to know that. So don't get caught up in parties. I keep trying to tell you that. That's the cute and the dirty.
I agree.
Okay, they have a drink afterwards, and they laugh and have a good time after they finish fighting. I'm trying to let you know how power really works. You get in the room and they say, okay, how can we work this out? And you know what? Don't embarrass me when we get out to the cameras because, I got to please my people. You got to please. Okay, I got you. That's how it works. You can challenge me. I don't care. I really don't care. I don't care. I know what I know. And I'm a very grown woman. I got more days behind me than I have ahead. What I'm trying to give you is the benefit of what I've learned. Very few people have been in this space. Okay, so I'm trying to share this with you, and I'm not coming top down. The Lord let us go into these places and said, now you come back home and you tell everybody how this really works. That's all. So when I see some of these people who we see on TV and they see me, they say, wow, you already know how this works. And they laugh, they smile, they give me a hug. Because they already know I know. I'm just trying to share it with you. What Robert Williams, you said, what does Jesse want now is what our so-called friends in the Democratic Party said. That was the cover of Time and Newsweek magazine when he won the Michigan primary. What does he really want? And then one of the other covers was Jesse, ? 2 exclamation points. How dare someone who wants universal single payer, who wants to eliminate poverty, who wants to eliminate war, who wants to increase, how dare you want to be president? You ought to be upset about that. Don't be upset with me. Be upset about that. You ought to be tired of folks lying to you and going into office and dropping bombs and killing everybody and denying you opportunity and upholding an industry that will not insure you when you pay into it. You ought to be sick of that. I'm not your problem. Somebody else is. Reserve your ire for them. I love you, everybody. Let's talk on the Santita Jackson Show. Oh, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Love you.
Great seeing everybody.